Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Hey all you cool cats and critters. It's Carol Baskin here, and no, I did not kill my husband. That's from Tiger King, if anyone cares. I've recently been watching that. I know that I'm way past the trend right now. I know that trend has been way before, probably way before Corona even happened. So I'm really getting into my TV phase where all I watch are just TV documentaries, super funny television shows like Tiger King, so don't judge me, please. Well, anyways, today we're going to get into the beautiful world of unknown kink. That means strange kink, unknown kink that you probably haven't even heard of yet, and then I will be introducing it to you, which is a fun little treat for me. I love teaching people. A lot of the stuff you would think that you would know, but maybe you don't know. Like, people are attracted to anything underneath the sun. That's just a given. We're humans. We have this innate ability to find sexual attraction in any kind of activity that we do, which is crazy. Some of it's like really stupid and weird, like, things that are illegal. But other things are like, oh, that's kind of fun. Like, I was watching this My Strange Addiction episode where this woman was literally married and sexually attracted to a Ferris wheel. So that's fun. Love that shit. Love it a lot. I absolutely love people that have weird sexual fantasies and kinks, because it's kind of like talking to somebody in a whole other world. Somebody that is just somebody that you wouldn't think that you would look at. You look at somebody and you're like, oh yeah, she's a, practical missionary gal. No, she likes balloons being popped on her vagina. Like, how? Come off it, Kink is one of those things where the world of kink is endless. Like 1,000 or 10,000 leagues underneath the sea. I think that's what it is. Again, I haven't read the book or whatever it is. So the reference may just go over someone's heads, whatever. But it's kind of like that, where it's like Davy Jones' locker, the Titanic, sank below that, and then below that is like hell or something like that, where it's that there's so much to unpack, so much to uncover, that it's honestly so hard. And it cannot be covered all in an hour-long episode. I can guarantee you that. There may be a part 2 to this, so let's just say that this is part 1, because when I tell you there's just so much to unpack here. And we're honestly only going to scrape the surface of it, which I kind of like, because diving into a world of kink and like sexual fantasy, for more than an hour long makes my literal head burst, because there are so many things that you can talk about. There's so many things that you can get into. It's honestly scary. It can be scary sometimes. You dive into this world and you don't even know what's up, what's right, what's normal, what's wrong. Obviously, normal is a construct. We all know this. And there's nothing wrong with being different and have different sexual fantasies. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it's the fact that anything can be a sexual fantasy. And I think that's what scares me, because it's so deep. It literally goes so deep. That's kind of sexy. It goes so deep. Oh, but honestly, I'm just going to stop. Let's just go to the show, shall we? Let's just go to the show. By the way, this is the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. It is me, your girl, Mariel. I'm here coming to you also, again, through my bathroom this time. It's a fun little sexy switch up. I'm right by the pooper. That was so gross. I'm so sorry. I'm right by the toilet. I'm filming, recording in my bathroom. The acoustics are phenomenal. Phenomenal. So anyways, let's just get into it. Let's get into it. The stories behind it. Let's talk about the stories behind it. Let's talk about the normalized kinks in different cultures. Let's talk about what actually is kink and versus fetish. And then let's get into like some of the names. It's, you know, the names are going to be really hard for me to pronounce because I'm a white woman and I only studied Spanish. So that's going to be a little bit hard for me. So excuse the mispronunciation of these names as we get into this. Kinks. Sexual kinks. When we think about kinks, we usually think about intense BDSM play. Like when you think, again, for a normal person or for a person who doesn't really like engage in a lot of intensely kinky stuff, it can be kind of intimidating even scraping the surface of this, you know, even having this conversation to people. It can be kind of hard because you're like, I thought that kinks were like a big man in a little baby diaper saying goo goo gaga while somebody like slaps his ass. That is something that is a kink. It's definitely kink, but it doesn't like, that's, you don't have to go 0 to 100 here. You know, there's limits. There's so much. You can have like the smallest kink from like, ooh, you like to get choked out. That's a kink. To like the, you know, to one of the bigger kinks where like, which we'll get into, which like, I like to be mummified. I like to be like passed out or like nearly unconscious, wrapped up in duct tape and like pleasured. You know, that's crazy. Okay, that's crazy to me, but like, that's a kink. That is a kink. That is a valid kink. And it's in the world of kink. And that's all of that we're going to talk about. We're going to dive into it. You know, let's just get in. Let's just get into the difference between kinks and fetishes first and foremost, which I'm learning a lot. I mean, I'm honestly such a genius sometimes. I like blow my own mind. I literally like research these topics that, you know, I decide day of, you know, when I'm going to do. And then I just research all day long and then obviously record at the crack of dawn. It's just the way that I work. But I have learned so much in this process. My mother, if she was ever listening, God forbid she ever listened to, if you're here, Mom, please turn it off right now. But anyways, if she knew, she would be like, oh my God, my baby is so educated. And it's like, yes, I am. But once again, let's just get into it. A fetish is something that we find sexual. You know, it's not typically sexual, like feet, you know, it's an object of fixation. So for example, a hair iron, let's talk about a hair iron. Obviously when it's not on, when it's not hot. If someone was massaging that into your genitals and it was a fun turn on, that might be considered a kink. But if the hair iron itself turns you on, that's a fetish. That's a fetish. Like if somebody, I was talking to one of my friends about this because I was like, hey, you know, what should I do this episode on? They're like, oh my God, you should do it about kinks, like uncommon kinks or like kinks and stuff like that. And I was like, hell yeah, sign me up. And she was talking about this guy that she was, you know, having sex with, and he would like to stick his toe into into parts of your body, into your you know, your vagina or your anus or something like that would get him off. So let's classify that. Is that a kink or is that a fetish? My gut says kink because it's not required to get him off. His toe being in someone else, obviously consensually, his toe inside of someone else's vagina or anus is not the only thing that gets him off. It's not the toe that gets him off. I think it's the act of sticking something that's unordinary into someone else's vagina or someone else's anus. I think that's what gets him off. But regardless, his feet don't get him off. It's like the act of it. It's it's the sexual act. So I think that's his kink. But also like he doesn't use it every single day. It's not the one thing that makes him come, if that makes any sense. So kink is something that's non-traditional. You know, it falls outside of the cultural normalcy, for being sex related. Like, you know, somebody wanting to make you cry, you know, that's a kink. That is a kink. Let me reiterate. If the object is what gets you off, then that's your fetish. That's your fetish, baby. That's your fetish. But if the act of doing something, if you really enjoy like the whole hair, you know, the whole hair iron thing, if you like, if like that's like fun to you, then that's your kink. Does that make sense? Oh, hopefully that makes sense. It makes sense to me. So, kinks are super fun to play out with your partner or by yourself. To be kinky can be really anything you describe it as being. Being kinky doesn't mean you have to go to the most extreme thing that you can find. It can mean you being tied up sometimes during sex, or you like to get your butt smacked. I mean, or you like to get whipped. I mean, there are literally so many different things that you can classify as being a kink. It doesn't need to be so like intense. You don't need to start from like 100 when you know mentally you're at a 0. So why do we even have kinks though? Why? Does it mean that we're messed up, or like, you know, we had a messed up childhood, or if we absolutely like to get demolished by 2 men wearing baby costumes, are we messed up? Hell no. Absolutely not. Get your zhuzh, honey. That is not messed up. If everything's consensual, if everyone agrees to it, if everyone's having a good time, then no, you're not messed up at all. Absolutely not. Who you are in your personal life can be different from who you are in your sexual life. You can have 2 different personalities in life. I know that in life, I'm nice, I'm understanding, I'm a Cancer sign, so I'm very emotional. But man, in the bedroom, I love to beat people up. Like, beat them up. Make them cry, make them beg for it. Just really anything. Obviously, it's all consensual. But that's just my thing. It wasn't, it really wasn't until college where I discovered my kinks. I was with multiple different men that really liked to be super dominant and aggressive. And I thought that was what I liked. Cause they initiated it. And at the time I was very, very passive, very submissive. I was just like, yeah, I'll just go along with it. But I thought that's what I liked. So, but deep down I kind of knew there was something out there for me, something more for me, a better kink, if you will. I knew that one sexy kink was out there for me, but I just didn't know what it was yet. I really didn't know. It wasn't until I pegged, which means physically penetrate someone with an object, usually a dildo, but it can be something else. Usually in the anus of a man or has sexually reproductive male organs, but this guy was, this man that I was having sex with, he asked me if I wanted to peg him. And I'm like, sure, whatever, sounds fun, yeah. Like, in my mind, I was like, this could be something good. But on the outside, I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Just whatever. I'll have sex with you. It's fine. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. It was kind of from that moment forward where I knew I wanted to humiliate people. Make them feel pain, obviously in a consensual way, but like peg people. I knew that I wanted to do that. I knew I wanted to be on the dominant side of it, but to what extent I did not know, and I still don't know. I'm still discovering it. But spit on them, call them names, physically penetrate them. Again, fast forward to a few years where I'm with my current partner, and she asked me, "Hey, can you like dominate me a little bit?" And I was like, all right, whatever. Like, again, I'm really down for whatever. So she just kept on asking me to do these things that I was like, I wanted to do, but I don't know if she was that comfortable with, like spitting on her and like using different objects to penetrate her, or to like to call her really mean names and just like be so mean to her. Which I kind of like had to gradually get myself into, but I knew that I liked it. I knew that I wanted to do that from day one. It's just finding the partner to do that was a little bit, it took me It's a little bit of a journey. It was a little bit of a journey, but I remember this one time where we were starting to have sex together, and I grabbed her by her legs. I started to consensually force like objects into her, spit in her mouth, using my hands against her body, like beating her with my hands, tied up her hands so that she couldn't move, gagged her with her own underwear, and then just edged her, which basically means like not allowing to come. And I realized, I knew kind of from at that point that was like a good check mark in my life. Like that was a really good part of my life. And it's kind of, my sex life has kind of turned towards that point, which is excellent for me because I absolutely love it. And it's good for her because she has asked me to do all of those things. And I was like, yeah, you don't have to ask me twice, really. So I encourage you to find your own kinks too. I encourage you to find a partner that is really interested in exploring things with you. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I don't want, like, every time I speak, it feels like I'm on a TED Talk and I'm like telling you my life story, which could be possible, but I promise it's not preachy. It's more like, hey, here's my sexy experience as. Come listen. So how is kink identity, formed? I genuinely had to look this up. I had to do my research about it because I was curious. Like, you're not effed up when you have sexual fantasies that are not normal. It's completely normal. It's completely normal. According to Samuel Hughes, a psychological researcher at the University of California, Santa Cruz, he recruited around 292 people through FetLife, which FetLife, if you don't know already, is an online platform for individuals to kind of come together and meet. So that's always really fun. But he studied their kinks and their childhood, and he broke kink down into 5 stages. 5 stages. One being early encounters, typically taking place before the age of 10. This could mean wanting to, this could mean wanting to be captured while playing cops and robbers, as a young kid, wanting to be, or seeing television shows about superheroes in peril and kind of really being drawn to that. So that's kind of what he explains through his article. The next stage is exploration with self. This usually is between 5 to 14 years old, and the exploration occurs from fascination, masturbating while exploring erotic media, discovering new parts of the body that we can enjoy while playing with. And the next step is evaluation. This is kind of where individuals start to truly start to evaluate their kink interests for means into their own identities. So taking this obviously takes place between 11 to 14 years old, but it's kind of where your kinks kind of form into your personality, where you have more of a dominant personality as a young kid, then that's kind of something that you're more interested in. It can kind of include a little bit of stigma or shame to it behind their interests, realizing that not all of their interests are shared by their peers. So kind of what that means is when you have friends and you talk about kind of what you like and what you don't like, that doesn't mean sexually. It just kind of means what you're kind of into as a kid, as a child, or as a teen, and what your experiences have been, both like small intimate ways, kissing a boy or kissing a girl or kissing a non-binary individual, sharing those kind of feelings with another person, and they could completely think that they don't feel the same way as you do, in terms of like they haven't had those same feelings too. So the 4th stage is finding others. So it takes place around age 11, and it is the discovery that others are interested in the same thing that you are. Kind of finding your tribe, so to speak. Physically attending a kinky club, obviously you wouldn't do that at 11. Let's be real. You'd start at around 18, and you would attend these clubs, trying to find what you like and what you don't like, talking with more people about your kink, or just doing more research about it. And finally, the last stage is exploration with others, which I hope that you can imagine what that is. This kinkiness usually comes after 18, and usually with other people. For lots of people, kink is explored with others. So kinks come along when you're older and more sexually developed, but it forms when you're young and what you look at and find attractive as a child. It's kind of weird, huh? It's a little bit weird. So now that we talked about what kink really is, let's get into the unknown side of kink. Kinks that you really didn't know were a thing just until now. More of that after the break.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Hello guys, gals, and everyone with sex organs. I am back from the break and better than ever, better than ever. I'm having some tea, some lemon. I'm so fancy. My partner's making a late night snack for us. So excited. She's recently coming into being a good chef, so I'm really proud of her. Really freaking proud of her. Anyways, enough lovey cute shit. Let's talk sex. Let's talk about sex. Kinky sex. Here is a list. I'm just going to get into it. Here is a list of the most unknown kinks that are a little strange, but hey, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your cousin, your mother could have this kink. So don't judge a book by its cover, okay? We wouldn't want that. Hello, look at me. You wouldn't think that I'm this, amazing lover in bed. You would just think I'm this little chubby flight attendant looking gal, and I am. But I'm also really good in bed. So you wouldn't know that. So don't judge a book by its cover. I'm being so so nice to myself right now. This is a rarity. This is a rarity. Who can relate? Okay. Some of these are kind of gross, but I promise I'll spare you the details by just kind of, summing up what they are. I promise. Number 1 is emetophilia. This is a kink of women or men vomiting on them for sexual pleasure. Yes, you heard me right. Vomiting. Couples will go together to a nice big dinner, all you can eat, or go to an all you can eat buffet, really, and then go home and just throw up on each other. Just toss your cookies on each other. And this lovely kink is practiced by a lot. More common than you think. It really is more common than you think. You just don't really think about it because it's really not in your wheelhouse, or it might be in your wheelhouse and I'm just totally getting off base. I'm totally not even in the right here. You can let me know, please. Comment, tell me. For me, though, it's a little strange, I will say. It's definitely unknown. I did not know about this until now. Number two, formicophilia. The sexual arousal when bugs crawl all over your genitalia. Bugs. A lot of people, okay, this is not to kink shame, by the way. I'm just scared of bugs. I'm very scared. So excuse me. I'm so sorry. It is when bugs crawl all over your genitalia. How fun is that? A lot of people use snails for this kind of kink. Apparently gives them this intense sexual gratification, which if you think about it, could feel a lot like a tongue, but just a bug. Snails. I don't know. Think about it. Think about it a little bit. Number 3 is oculolintus. It's sexual gratification when someone licks your eye. You would have to get someone to be willing to lick your eye, but that's the kink. Licking someone's eye, or no, excuse me. It's getting someone to lick your eye, having your eye licked. That is a part of sexual gratification. I love it. I think that's great. I may just try this out myself. I don't know, but that's insane. I don't know a lot of people that would be necessarily willing to do that, but hey, it doesn't matter. There are people out there that find this really sexually gratifying. All right, number 4. Clismophilia. It's number 4 on our list. This wonderful kink is getting turned on by enemas. Enema. Whatever one you want to say. So an enema is when someone sticks a tube up your rectum, pumps fluids to clean out your entire anal cavity. It usually happens when you have to get a colonoscopy. They stick up a pipe full of cleaning or clearing agents, and boom, there you go. You got a colonoscopy. Some people will do coffee enemas, which are exactly what it sounds like. It happens a lot, and people like to do it. I've watched My Strange Addiction. Honestly, I'm going to say it. My Strange Addiction has been one of those places where you find almost everything sexually related. 3 of those things that were on My Strange Addiction, I'm not saying I got my ideas from there because I didn't. Somebody else gave me this topic that I was like, oh yeah, totally, I'm going to do some research about it. But you cannot help but tie the similarities, because it's insane. There's just like so many similarities. So caffeine or coffee enemas are basically just a way for you to get your caffeine through your anus. Your tissue in your anus just absorbs right into your bloodstream. So it's so easy for you to get like this caffeine inside of your body, which is fun. That's a really fun thing. Moving on to number 5 is lithophilia. That is when someone likes to roll around in stones and gravel, and they get turned on by that. It's interesting, I will say, because the perfect marryment would be someone who is a construction site owner and then someone who has lithophilia, which would be absolutely perfect for that. All right, number 6, olfactophobia is a sexual attraction towards someone's body odors. Smelly feet, smelly armpits, smelly genitals, smelly butt, anything smelly. Or body odors in a good way. Maybe they have a nice smelling scalp. Then they really like that. That's something that they really like. Again, the perfect marryment for that would be a gym rat and then someone who has this olfactophilia or olfactophobia. It's super hard to pronounce. I think that would be a perfect marryment. Number 7. We all know of sexual attraction towards peeing on somebody or getting peed on. But this kink is part of a Japanese subculture called omorashi, which all its members find it sexually arousing when a person of high status or someone who is dignified, someone who looks dignified, someone who is dignified class status wise, is suffering from a bladder desperation and wets themselves in public when they can no longer hold it in. This is a very specific kink fantasy, and honestly, I am living for it. I'm living for this. It's kind of a power play and a power move when you find someone so attractive that they wet them, and you find someone so attractive when they wet themselves in public because they were unable to get to a bathroom, but most importantly, a public figure or someone who is dignified kind of degrade themselves a little bit by, wetting themselves in public. I don't know why, but I think that's really funny. And also I could see myself really being into this. I have not explored this fantasy, but I just might, because that's kind of hot. I'll say it. All right. Number 8. It's like bondage. In a BDSM kink wrapped all together, no pun intended, but it's to the point of being mummified. Again, no pun intended. This kink involves being wrapped up like a mummy, left bound up, and someone having sex with you, or you pleasuring yourself, or someone pleasuring you in some kind of way. This is one of the more interesting kinks because it's not the run of the mill. It's really not your normal kink. It's not your arms being tied up like in bondage. It's not your feet being tied up. It's your whole entire being mummified. Your whole entire body being wrapped up in rope, leather, duct tape even, to the point where you're being in a way suffocated, but obviously you're not entirely, hurting yourself. You have a safe word. And you're also consenting throughout this entire thing. They haven't necessarily they haven't restricted you from being able to talk. You have a safe word. But someone being aroused by that, the effort that just to have sex with somebody like that is intense, because wrapping a body is insane. I mean, okay, I've never wrapped a body before, but I can imagine. One can imagine in duct tape. But it must be so cool. I don't know, that's kind of a cool kink, because it's just so much effort, but also it's insane. That's really interesting. I mean, oh my God. Okay, number 9. Number 9 is another interesting kink. Someone likes to get their hair shampooed and finds it sexually arousing, and they can also get off on it in a way, is called tripsalangia. It's called tripsalangia. This is interesting because I think that they would have a huge problem going to the hairdresser. They would have to find a hairdresser that's cool with it, because if you show up with a huge boner in your pants, no. If you get your hair wet and they're washing and massaging your hair with shampoo and you have a huge boner, they're going to be so upset. They're going to be so pissed. Because they're like, what the hell are you doing? This is a salon. You can't just get off on something like this. But it's that's their kink. Whoops. But you have to mention it to somebody if you are going to get your hair done, because that is insane and no one wants to see that. That's insane. All right, number 10. Number 10 is a literal disaster. Literal. It's called symphorophilia. Symphorophilia. It's when someone gets aroused by seeing, causing, or being in an accident of some kind or another major disaster. It can either be a twister or they're completely normal and they're just, I think it's so interesting. Being in, causing, or being around or seeing a natural disaster, a disaster, or a car wreck, and being aroused by that, you cannot tell me that there isn't some power play in that. You cannot tell me that there's some kind of sadism in there. I want to know this because that's so interesting. That's just so interesting. Well, there you have it. 10 unknown kinks, or interesting and / strange kinks that we now know about, that I genuinely did not know about. I didn't know the names of them. I didn't even know that it was a thing. So I hope you're the same way, because man, I just educated myself, and probably all of you. Maybe. I don't know. I'm going to do some more exploring with some of these with my partner. I really am, because this is kind of interesting. The mummy sounds kind of nice. It's kind of like a massage. You're getting wrapped up by rope. You can't move. And then your partner is just pleasuring yourself, or pleasuring her, or pleasuring something, probably pleasuring you. I don't know. That sounds kind of nice. After the break, we're going to get into those stories from unknown kinks or uncommon kinks that we really just don't know about. But let's take a break. Let's take a pee. Let's take a little drinky poo. Let's take a little drinky break. Talk to your mom on the phone. I know you haven't called her in a minute. I'm singling everybody out who has not called their mom. Call your mom right now and then come back. I mean, I'm sure by the time the break ends, you'll be done having a conversation with her. So just do it.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back from the break. Hope we're all hydrated and ready to go back into the world of kink, the unknown world of kink. How was your mom, by the way? I know you called your mom. How was she? She good? Okay, cool. Great. Thank you for tuning back in to the GSMC Sex Podcast. I again am your host, Mariel, and I want to say, leave us a comment on how we're doing. If you hate the episode, let me know. Tell me in the comments or message me on Facebook. Let's fight. If you want to message me on Facebook, give me a little personal DM and be like, hey, I hate that episode. I'll be like, okay, you know what? Let's fight. Just kidding. I would probably lose. I'm not a strong individual like you are, most likely. All right, well, let's get into story time. This one comes from Reddit. He writes, a young woman once asked me to draw pictures of her naked back. Draw on her naked back with pictures on a permanent marker. I've never been much of an artist, but I gave it a try nonetheless. About halfway through my first attempt, the girl starts moaning and writhing beneath me in a way that seemed really exaggerated. And I, although did my best to focus on the task, the motions of my partner made it really difficult. Do you want me to keep doing this? I asked her. She said, yes. Oh my, yes. She said it. So, and she also said, yes, don't stop. Draw all over me. Again, the whole thing seemed more like a performance than it did an actual response to pleasure. But nonetheless, I continued. I started to get suspicious though. I was being made a butt out of some bizarre joke that I was the butt of the joke. Every line that I drew sent this girl into an amazing delight until she finally moaned for me to put away the marker and get out the paint sprayer. Oh my God. The rest of the evening eventually went on about you'd expect from such encounters, even though a tiny voice in the back of my head kept saying what I'd missed about the whole situation. I finally got my answer when the girl asked to take a shower with me. It turned out that she really, really wanted me to scrub her skin until it was practically raw. Suffice to say that she hadn't needed me to put on the act at the time. We wound up having an informative discussion after I'd washed the remnants of my drawing off her, and it came to light that she'd always liked the feeling of being bathed roughly. When I asked why she'd simply requested that in the first place, she sheepishly admitted that having a kink for emulating an easel seemed less bizarre to her. To each their own, I guess. That's actually super funny. Who doesn't like to get bathed roughly? I don't know, just me. I feel like getting drawn on feels so good. Whether it turns me on though I really don't think so. But getting bathed roughly, that's not a weird kink. Oh my gosh, I hope you didn't kink shame her. That would suck. Unless kink shaming is your kink. I don't even want to get into that. That's a lot. She should have told you though at the start of the process that was her kink. Anyways, on to the next one. This one comes from Reddit. It's from someone working in the strip club industry. I'm not a sex worker, but was the DJ of a strip club in Atlanta for 12 years. We had this guy come in every Wednesday with a McDonald's bag and go straight to VIP with the same girl every time. This wasn't ever odd to me, as we were allowed to bring our own food and even order food while we were there. We had a free buffet during the day and ran the kitchen at night. That's so funny. Can you think about that? Like a buffet and strippers? You're like eating corn, and like while some woman is like giving the best lap dance of your life, and you're eating like roasted corn with feta. Like that would just be so ridiculous. Like I just can't even think about that. The owner did not mind it during the day, as it left more free buffet food for the dancers and other customers. I just can't go over the fact that food and strippers, my God. So one Wednesday, I was in the back talking with the dancers, and the dancer that went into the VIP with the same guy was there when the waitress comes in and says he'd arrived and she needed to head to the VIP room ASAP. She laughed and told her to hold on, as she had to get her big heels out of her locker. The other guy started to laugh, and one said she was jealous the easy money the other girl would acquire. Curiosity got the best of me, and I asked her what made the money so easy. She then proceeds to tell me that this guy stops at McDonald's before he comes there and gets a quarter pounder with cheese, puts it in a Ziploc bag, and then goes to the VIP. Her only job while in the VIP was to step on the bagged quarter pounder with a heel so it smashed it, and with her other foot to step on the dude's nuts and slap him a bit. No way. She said it was the easiest, funnest $200 she made, and it looked forward to it every Wednesday. She put on her big heels and went to go step on this dude's hamburger and nuts. I've been told, sorry, I'm busting a laugh right now. This is so funny. I've been told a lot of stories by the dancers and walked in on quite a few interesting scenes in the VIP, but this one always stood out to me. If someone ever asks about the weird things I've seen in my time as a DJ on a strip club, this is always the story I have to tell. That is, oh my God, that's literally the funniest thing I've ever heard. I'm like trying to contain my laughter because it's not, like I don't want to be like laughing in the mic too hard because it's so funny. Whether it's because he likes getting his balls stepped on, or because he likes getting a quarter pounder on his balls, or because he likes getting hurt by someone, this kink is a very special kink, I will say. This puts all the others to shame. Oh my God. Okay. This next one. Okay, I'm gonna have to contain myself. Oh God. Okay, this last one is shorter, but I still think it's super funny. So it's super relevant to the kink community. He says, I was a taxi driver on night shift. Loved the job. Loved it. I had a regular escort who always requested me, probably because I didn't ask her to do anything, and we really didn't talk, and she was kind of super quiet. She'd go up to the apartment house or hotel of the room and have me wait, sometimes a full hour, but rarely over 15 minutes. Rarely. I never argued because waiting and return trips keeps the meter running longer. One time she came down, maybe after 10 minutes. She looked half amused and half terrified. She said that the guy had her put on a muumuu and an old lady wig and yell at him while he took a poop and pleasured himself. I can't. Having sex with a grandma is like your kink. That's fine. That's totally fine. But like pooping as well, it's like I just can't get that image out of my head, honestly. I don't want to have that image in my head anymore. Well, there you have it. There are 3 stories about unknown or interesting kinks in the community. Sorry if I violated your ears. Sorry if I absolutely tortured your ears with what I just said, but I promise you all of it was consensual. I read it beforehand and went on the Discord, and all of it was All of it was consensual. 2 of it was from sex workers. The other was not. But I realized that, you know, kink kind of comes in all different shapes or forms. I'll say it. Kink comes when kink comes. I think it really doesn't take a lot to explore your own kinks and your own sexuality. I really don't think it just takes a good partner, and maybe $200 if you're the guy with the Big Mac. I love it. I love talking about this kind of stuff because it really warms my heart, because I know that a lot of people out there I'm so happy. I know a lot of people out there are really curious about, you know, about their sexuality and also about their kinks. And like, just go out and do it with somebody who's consenting. Go out and do it. Have a fun time. Have a fun time. It really, I love it. And I love that for you. I really do. Next up, after the break, it's common kinks around the world. And yeah, we're going to get into them. We're going to get into a lot of it. Stay tuned.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Heyo! What's up, friends? It's your girl, Mariel Temishi. Hello. So please subscribe to the GSMC podcast, the sex podcast, or any of our podcasts at the GSMC podcast network. We got more episodes like this, or we got sports podcasts. We got relationship podcasts. If you like that kind of stuff, we got Bible podcast. Yes, we do. And I love it. I think it's great. Go on Facebook and like us at GSMC podcast and really just show us some love. I know I would. Just do it. Just do it. Now back to the regularly scheduled content, what you have been here for and here when you're wanting to listen. So we talked about uncommon kinks. We talked about what makes a kink and what it stems from. We talked about stories behind kinks. And now we're going to get into common and normalized kinks around the world, starting with the United States. Yes, sir, we're going to get into it. If you're part of the West, California, Washington, Oregon, that's us, baby. We talk about masochism. That is the most common kink, masochism. This basically means that you like to be humiliated. Yes, you do. You like pain to be inflicted on you. I mean, there are obviously different variants to that. I mean, not everyone who is a masochist likes, you know, to be called names or be humiliated, but it's part of the territory. It is absolutely part of the territory. Some masochists like to be tied up and flogged, you know, BDSM style. Others prefer to be verbally humiliated alone. And some are aroused by more severe or dangerous forms of masochism, like asphyxiation, which is cutting off your breathing, you know, your airways. But those are only just to name a few. There's so many in the world of masochism and BDSM. It is infinite. That's why I'm scared, because there are so many out there, and it's like we've only just tapped into the surface of it. According to Psychology Today, masochism or masochists tend to be upper middle class. Yeah, upper middle class. I honestly can imagine like Jeff Bezos, the CEO, founder or whatever of Amazon, just absolutely getting demolished by like his wife. I believe he has a wife, or his girlfriend at the time, with like a strap on, or like, you know, just get spat on, get like beaten up. I just can absolutely imagine that. He seems like that kind of dude. Just me, maybe just me. You know what? Just go look at a picture of him and tell me, and tell me that he does not like to be tied up or absolutely just beaten up sexually and consensually. But just tell me that he doesn't look like that, because he does. Like, he does. He's got a bald head. He's got a face that looks weird. Jeff Bezos. You know, I got my own beef with Jeff Bezos. Okay, he doesn't need to be in this podcast. I'm just gonna stop talking about him. God. They tend to be well educated, and are more men are masochists than females, or more, you know, males who are born with male sexual organs are more masochist. There are more of them that are masochist, I should say. And the onset of this is 19. It's 19. It's kind of usually when you start finding your sexual identity, when you start having sex, or when you start having sex and enjoying it. That's kind of when you start to experiment and really kind of test your boundaries, push yourself a little bit, and figure out what exactly you like and what you don't like. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I encourage it, obviously with a consenting partner and with you, you know, being at a sexual mature level. So with that being said, I personally like to call myself a sadomasochist, because I like I like inflicting pain, but I also like pain myself. I also enjoy having pain inflicted upon me. I kind of go both ways. I don't know. So the next part is, if you're part of the Midwest, their top kink is group sex, and then wait for this. You're never going to believe. Sports gear. Sports gear is on the top list of Midwestern kinks. I'm not joking with you. I wish I was kidding. I once dated this guy, obsessed with sports. Oh my God, he was obsessed with sports. To me, there's nothing wrong with sports. There's really nothing wrong with it. I'm not in a position where I can really speak upon sports, because I don't really know anything about it. I know a lot about sex. Therefore, I have a sex podcast, but I don't know anything about sports. So anyways, he would take me to all these games, and me being a, you know, pansexual woman, really just, I look gay. I'll say it. I look gay. I look very, I look like I belong in a drag show. I wear big, heavy makeup. I wear crazy clothes. My hair is always dyed a crazy color. I make my own earrings, which are usually fruit. And I got tattoos on my body. I just look queer. I look gay. So going into that environment is a little bit insane. I will say it's a little bit off-putting, I will say. But there was this one time where he was like, I really want you to just hear me out on this one. And I was like, okay, I'm hearing you out. And he was like, I really want you to like wear my sports jersey when we're having sex. And I was like, you know what? For you, I will do it. I will absolutely do it. And let me tell you, it was just average. It was just average sex. It wasn't like mind blowing, but I feel like that's all that I have to contribute to sports gear, because sports gear can mean anything. It could mean going to sports, being attracted to sports, being attracted to the ball, which is more of a fetish than a kink. It could mean wanting to have sex with somebody who is in sports. Sports gear is so interesting to me. I don't get it. My brain won't let me process that information. Maybe my brain doesn't like sports gear as like a sexual kink. God, I need to stop kink shaming. That's like the 5th time I've done that. I'm so sorry. That's not cool. Anyways, group sex. We all kind of know what group sex is. It's like a circle jerk, if you will. It's basically people standing in a circle all masturbating together. Actually, the funny story, the Beatles actually came out, you know, when they were when they had a documentary, one of the really big documentaries that they had that was like Oscar winning or something like that. They came out that they said they all would just partake in a lovely little group sex in a way, but they wouldn't penetrate each other. They would just pleasure themselves basically all in a circle or basically side by side. So I'm curious. I'm curious as to why they would do that. But anyways, Midwest, group sex, and sports gear. God, I love that. Maybe sports gear is more like cheerleaders. Maybe it's finding cheerleaders attractive. I mean, who doesn't find a cheerleader attractive? But I don't know. The jury's still out on that one. I think what it was explained was they find the idea of sports and also sports gear and sports paraphernalia attractive. So that's kind of where it is. So I do know what it is. I'm just doubting myself here. Anyways, in the South, the kinks are suits and masochism. Suits and masochism. So suits could mean a woman, a man, a non-binary person, and everybody in between wearing like a formal suit, suit, tie, pants, little button up, a little bow tie or a little tie, if you will. They find that super attractive. That's one of their kinks apparently. So good for them, honestly. It's a nice way to say to somebody, hey, so one of my kinks is that you get dressed up. And they're like, it's like your partner of 10 years and you're like, hey, so like one of my kinks is like you getting super dressed up and like giving me a bunch of money and like cooking for me. And they're like, yes, kinks. Oh my God. Yes, I will fulfill this kink of yours, which I think it's so funny. I know it's real. I know it's valid. I could see where they're going with that. And obviously masochism, which we had talked about, which is the love of pain and pleasure inflicted upon oneself or somebody inflicting it onto you. So, the Northeast, there is a tie of 9. There's a tie of 9. Yeah, it's pretty intense. There is BDSM, sadism, which is you love to put others through pain, balloons. Oh God, I love this. This is going to be good. Balloons, edging, group play, leather, nylons, the sound of sex, and of course the classic foot fetish. Foot fetish. I love it. Balloons is one of the interesting things to me because we didn't really cover it with kinks, but to me, this is more of a fetish. To me, it's just a little bit more of a fetish than it is actually like a kink because you're attracted to the balloon itself. But we're going to let it pass. We're going to let it slide. We're going to, for the podcast's sake, we're going to talk about it. Under definition, because the object is you can't come without it, it is fetish, but we're going to talk about it still. Sex around or near balloons, or even with a balloon, is an interesting kink because of their touch, their smell, and their sound. This is so damn interesting to me. So according to an interview with a balloon kink or a balloon fetish individual, the mere sight of balloons turns them on. They like blowing up the balloons. They like popping them, and some even use them as sex toys. There's a whole subculture in balloon fetish. People who like popping, non-popping, and semi-popping. So there are poppers, no poppers, semi-poppers. And the more you know, everybody, the more you know. I think that's also super interesting. Just like being attracted to balloons, is such a unique quality. And I want to talk to somebody about this because these interviews don't really give me an idea of who they are as an individual. And I understand that like being an individual and also your sex life are kind of two different things, but I want to know if it ever blends into their normal life. Like, do they ever go to a party and are like, excuse me, I have to excuse myself and like, go masturbate in the bathroom or something like that. Obviously this is an adult party, not a child's party. That's disgusting. But an adult's party, if there was ever balloons, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, is that ever a thing? Is that, I want to know. I really want to know. Okay. Now moving on to countries. In Southeast Asia, pharmacophobia is one of those, the normalized and popular kinks there. So remember, it's about bugs. It's about bugs. The oversupply of large snails makes this practice more common in Southeast Asia, which I think is so interesting. So definitely, for sure, that is like, it's a more common kink, but it's still very interesting and you don't really think about that. Brazil. Brazil is the country with the largest number of kinky people who reported that they enjoy odor-related fantasies. So remember what we had talked about odors and stinky armpits or stinky butts. These are good odors, and there's also bad odors to it too. So that's definitely one for Brazil there. Australia. So Australia is the largest population of kinky people to respond yes when the question was asked, do you have a pair of handcuffs on the side of your table, on the side of your bed table? So they love handcuff fantasies and kink, and I applaud them for it. I love that. I think that's great. It's very hot, super hot as well. In Canada, Quebec, more specifically, their top kink is voyeurism and pleasuring and watch, or which is the act of watching someone while they're having sex, but pleasuring yourself while watching these people, you know, either get it on or something of that nature, which I think is great. I think that's wonderful. So the UK, in a study released by, I believe it was Pornhub. Pornhub is the largest porn site online that you can, you know, download, watch, buy porn. So in the UK, they search spanking more than anyone else in the world alone, which I think is great. It's the top of the list. They're the spanks. Slightly unrelated, but data analyzed from Google on a website called Extreme Tech determined that Iraq and Egypt are the two countries with the highest rate of porn watching. These are the two most conservative countries in the United States, and they are the two highest population for porn watching. Just something to think about. I think that's super interesting. So these are just some of the countries and their most uncommon kinks, and that they have, and I didn't know about it. I think it's interesting. I think it's so super interesting. Sites like Pornhub have made this information completely public about the US, Australia, and UK, which I think is absolutely hilarious, because you could literally just like look onto online and find out in your area or in like a specific city in your country, what's the hottest for that? Like, what's the hottest kink in your area? I think that's great. I think that's actually so good. And if you don't know, now you know what I'm talking about. Exactly what I'm talking about. That's awesome. So that's all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for turning to the GSMC Sex Podcast. I, as always, am your host, Mariel. We learned a lot. We cringed together. We maybe laughed a little bit. But most importantly, we talked about sex, baby. We did it. Leave a comment wherever you're listening to. If any of this info you liked or hated or in between, if you liked it, let me know. If you hated it, let me know. I want to know all of it. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GSMC Sex Podcast. And I'm awful at outros. I'm really bad at outros. So until next time, I will see you then. Goodbye. Ooh, that was actually kind of good. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.